So a lot of the market right now is expecting the interest rates to drop. Why? Because this is what the Fed has done, at least over the last 40 years. We get into financial trouble, they drop the interest rate. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that Powell recognizes the Volcker mistake that was made. Volcker thought that, the inflation was going down. He went down with it. And then ultimately inflation took off and went through the roof. And we had to, jack the 10-year treasury up to almost 16% back in September 1981. And so there's a big mistake that he's certainly trying to ignore.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are watching and listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. It's 11/12/23, and hey, lots happening. Will this be a crash month? Will October be the nail in the coffin of the U.S. and global stock markets? I'm beginning to think not every day that goes by is another day the crash hasn't occurred. But one thing that's happening is inflation. And it just reminds me of a commercial from McDonald's where this little kid goes, "Daddy, what's inflation?" And he says, "Well, son, inflation is when the price of everything goes up and your daddy's salary stays the same and actually could be going down." So, hey, inflation, we get a CPI print today. And, well, David Stryzewski is with us now. David, so what do we make of the latest CPI number?
Well, as far as the CPI goes, I think there's a few things that we should really be paying attention to right now. Number one is that the CPI is not necessarily reflective of what the average individual is experiencing with their purchasing power. And so the example you just gave was great. Hey, Daddy, why is everything getting so expensive? Because I'm making the same amount and we got some challenges here. And so, what we have right now is a challenge with printing and spending that the government's doing. I believe the Fed has their thesis completely backwards. They believe that there's so much money chasing too few of items out there. That was certainly true under COVID when we had all that gridlock there in the supply chain. But today, the average family is putting more on the credit card right now just to afford day-to-day life because we've not necessarily had, responsible fiscal policy modeled for us by the government or even the large financial institutions. We just spend, put more on the card, and on we go. And so as we're looking at our CPI numbers right now, numbers came in hotter than expected. And so I was expecting that would occur. I thought it would actually be a little bit higher. And the reason why it didn't actually go up as high as I thought it would be was actually because the US dollar is stronger this month than it was last month. And actually, if we have a stronger dollar, that means that our dollars go further, at least on the producer side and with more international type of exposure. But we have, a higher read. Another thing to note about CPI is that we're not going back to pre-2020 prices. This means increases from this moment forward. That spells big problems right now for the average family who's making $50,000 to $75,000 a year. You're trying to figure out, how to make ends meet a long time ago. And now we're experiencing higher oil prices and, really as well over 300 union shutdowns this year alone, which is ultimately going to, be resulting in higher prices. Why? Because the pricing power of these companies has to raise the price to the consumer if they have to pay more per hour, bigger benefits, less work hours, whatever the situation might be. But there are workers striking all over the place because they do not have enough pricing power. So I think that the CPI is going to continue to go up. We've seen it actually since June. It started ticking back up. July it was up. August was up. September's now up. And so that's called a trend. And so when we see one happen, it's not necessarily a trend. 4 consecutive, that would be a trend that's developing. Now, they will also say that, when you get out energy and food prices, that came down 0.1% this last month. And so Exactly. And I again, they manipulate these figures, and they don't necessarily reflect the average person's personal CPI. What are they actually spending on? No one's buying a house every month, as an example, but housing prices are part of the reason why, the CPI is rising, because it's never been more expensive to own a house. So anyway, this is just new inflation that's being added because of the print and spend economics that President Biden has ultimately been authorizing, and Congress has been allowing. And we find ourselves in a really weird place here today, Kerry, which we might go into, talking about what the Fed might do next, but also the fact that the House is in disarray, and we've got till November 15th to not be on this punted time frame for the government shutdown. We got to pass 12 budgets. We've got to get a new Speaker of the House. And oh, by the way, there's impeachment proceedings against President Biden that are going on that look quite nefarious. So, there's a lot that's taking place right now. And I think that we're going to see a lot change here in the next 45 days.
Isn't that his son's name, Nefarious?
I think that might be his middle name.
His middle name, Hunter Nefarious Biden. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that might be right.
All right. So,
yeah, most protected man in the world, really. I mean, this guy's gotten away with so much.
I'll go back to Winston Churchill. He said, "God looks after children, drunks, and the United States of America." Hey,
well, that said, your lips to God's ears. As long as he's still looking after us right now, I mean, we need it.
With what's going on, I think he might have even given up on us. But hey, let's not get religious here. There's enough economic things to make your head spin. Numbers coming up, and what you're expecting here, David.
Okay. Well, so what I'm expecting next is that, the Fed is going to be meeting here again. So we've had 11 rate hikes. Are they going to go up a quarter point more? I don't think so. The 5.5, increases that they've done haven't necessarily, brought inflation down yet. And I believe that it's actually, a case could be made that we've actually lost the inflation battle. And by the way, we didn't even get PCE, the Fed's favorite indicator, didn't even get below 4 yet. We're running out of time for this lag effect to kick in. And it's a big problem because Powell was 18 months late, essentially, in acting on this inflation. Hey, it's transitory, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that he's had it wrong the whole time. And his biggest mistake is that he hasn't even talked to Congress about their deficit spending and said to them, you guys, you can't keep doing this. It's counterintuitive to what I'm trying to do. So a lot of the market right now is expecting the interest rates to drop. Why? Because this is what the Fed has done, at least over the last 40 years. We get into financial trouble, they drop the interest rate. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that Powell recognizes the Volcker mistake that was made. Volcker thought that, the inflation was going down. He went down with it. And then ultimately inflation took off and went through the roof. And we had to, jack the 10-year treasury up to almost 16% back in September 1981. And so there's a big mistake that he's certainly trying to ignore. And I don't think that he's going to move on further rate increases until we really see a trend develop. But, we were supposed to be in easing already, Kerry. It was supposed to happen back in July. So I think this is the higher for longer revelation.
Yeah, where's the Powell pivot when you need it?
Yeah, there's no more Powell pivot right now. That Powell pivot would be only as a result of significant job losses, which if you can just give me 2 seconds on that, I have some stats that I don't think many people are aware of. Yeah. One of those things is that if you just look at the raw data, and I don't have it in front of me right here, but you can look this up. If we don't use the seasonally adjusted jobs numbers that just came out, but we just look at the raw numbers, do you know that we lost over 800,000 jobs just this last month? Mm-hmm. That was the highest amount of losses that we had since April 2020. April 2020 was the middle of COVID. That's when all these job losses were occurring. And so, so here we are with 800,000, it's like 860 maybe, 1,000 losses. And then we had, 1.1 million gains, but most of those were part-time work. This is people taking second or maybe even third jobs. That's not a healthy economy. It's also a lot easier to take a job than it is to create a job. So if you're letting go of all these employees, I'm telling you right now, we are not in a position as a nation to say, man, this is a healthy place. We're going to see this bull really come back here with strength. People are taking those second and third jobs that they really don't want. I mean, no one wants to work a second or a third, but they're going to because they need to afford their life. They don't want to foreclose their house, etc. So the system's getting repriced right now with this big credit change with interest rates raising.
And yet, David, the real estate market continuing prices going up in most markets across the country. Inventory being at an all-time low. Obviously, many of you in there are locked into your 3% mortgages. Like, imagine that a mortgage becomes an asset and a millstone around your neck.
So interesting. We sit at opposite sides of the table from a bank. Our liability, the mortgage, is their asset.
Yeah.
And so in 2020 and 2021, 50% of homeowners in America refinanced at 3% rates. Well, those 3% rates are far below what inflation is running at right now and what you should be getting for longer term 30-year investments of capital. I mean, we just saw the 30-year, hit 5%, 16-year high this last week. And so, this is not good for the banks. Additionally, there's not a lot of new money going into the banks right now. So not only do I personally anticipate a recession that's going to begin, probably first, maybe second quarter next year, but I'm also expecting that we're going to see this simultaneously happen with a financial crisis in banking. Now, recessions come and go. Yeah. Financial crises, these are bigger shifts. And it really comes down to the money supply and how this all works. But the banks can't compete with the 10-year Treasury or with the Treasury in general. Why? Because the Treasury is paying higher than 0.01 nothing. They insure more than $250,000 that a bank insures. They insure an indefinite amount of money. The banks are just, money's getting sucked out, and they've been leveraging up 10 to 1. And so this is where I'm concerned. You're down in Florida and everything's still going up in the real estate market. I'm in Washington State where the real estate market was so hot. I mean, we literally led the nation, I believe, through 2019, as far as where I specifically lived. But right now we're seeing a stalled out, real estate market. I'm looking at houses that are, sitting there. They're not 100 days now. And the only people that can really borrow are those who don't need to borrow. You got plenty of cash to maybe even buy it in cash.
Yeah.
And the banks are being just real picky eaters right now. I also talked to my Bank of America loan guy here the other day, and he said average rate that he was getting for his clients was better than 8%, a little bit higher than 8%. And I said, how many out of 10 that you believe could qualify or should qualify are actually getting their mortgages? He said 7 are probably not getting their mortgages. Only 3 or 30% of applicants that he was specifically working with are getting mortgages today. So even if you wanted to buy, it's really challenging to do. So this is not a great moment in that, but real estate's a lagging indicator. It's a slower mover because, it takes time to get a house to market, it takes time for people to find it, takes time to finance, et cetera. So it takes a minute for that one to show up.
Yeah, the only point I'd make is fact is the migration, which has fed the demand in the South. And we're not just talking Florida, we're talking Texas, we're talking Mississippi, Georgia, the Carolinas,
Tennessee,
all these, Tennessee, Kentucky. Man, nobody really moves to Kentucky unless they like bourbon a lot. But no, seriously, those people who are selling in the failing states and cities don't care about the rate. They're willing to pay 8% mortgage rates to get out of Dodge. That's what's different than any other market we've ever seen. So assuming they can qualify, they got good credit, they sold their home, they're getting out of Dodge. That's what's feeding the demand here. And honestly, David, I don't see anything that's going to stop that trend unless these failed cities and states do little things like prosecute shoplifters and prosecute criminals and have crackdowns, right?
I thought that's what our system was supposed to be doing anyway, right? No, we were this nation of rule of law, and that's why we were the healthiest economy to do business with.
You got it all wrong. The criminals are victims, okay?
Yeah,
and
right.
We need to make sure that their needs are met, So the criminals need to be coddled. and they need to be encouraged to continue their criminal pursuits. And that's exactly the policies. And then they can't figure out why people are leaving, why downtown San Francisco is a ghost city. You know what was encouraging, David? There was just a law passed that the erstwhile moronic governor of California, I won't mention his name, signed, which forces people who are homeless or on drugs to either get treatment or go to jail.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that there's a huge mental health pandemic that's taking place right now, whether we're talking about, people that are confused about other areas or other things. We've got fentanyl pouring over our border right now, very powerful stuff. And so you go to rehab or go to jail. I mean, that's a, we need to probably make ultimatums like that on some level, but at the same time, how does that actually benefit somebody? I think there might be some better approaches here in the 21st century to some of this.
We need to treat these things for what they are. Mental health crisis, addiction, whatever it is, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or whatever, is a mental health issue, not a criminal issue. Okay? Becomes criminal when you steal to support your habit, but were they to treat it that way, that would mean the price of illicit drugs would go way, way down, and it would kill the profit in the market. And I'm convinced the powers that be don't want that under any circumstances, David.
Well, the other thing is that, Newsom's got some law where you can steal up to $1,000 per occurrence. Go do it several times per day. We're not even going to charge you. So we're encouraging people right now with how we write the law. Yeah, I just signed last night, the little deal outside the grocery store. Washington State's done some weird stuff as well. We no longer allow our police officers to pursue people that they've turned on the lights that pull over. After a mile, they got to let them go.
Oh, no.
We're literally encouraging people, hey, just don't pull over and you won't get a ticket. Or if you've got drugs in the car, you're doing whatever, just don't even do it. Ignore them.
Yeah, have a car chase.
How is that going to help out? Have a car chase, exactly.
That's called life imitating cops. Well, we got to let it go at that. If you got a question, comment, David or myself, the email address is kl@kerrylutz.com. David, tell us your website, where we find you. Link will be in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com.
Yeah, my organization is called Sound Planning Group. myspg.com is our website. We've got a lot of great resources up there. I've got classes and different things that I teach about how to align your portfolio today, given where we are right now and some of the things that we just discussed. But Kerry, it's always a pleasure to be with you here, and looking forward to doing it again in the future.
Oh yeah, we'll probably talk to you next month when more numbers come out and more depression sets in. Hey, if we can manage to get through October without a crash, I think we're doing pretty good.
It would be, I think if we get through November 15th, which is when we've got to have a House Speaker, got to get stuff passed, or the government shuts down. I think that's the big one. And, Moody's is now looking at downgrading us as a nation. So those are my big, kind of waypoints here coming up in the next 30 days or so.
All right, Matt. Hey, be well. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, right. You too. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.